Hello, and thank you for joining today's demo mobility training series session, Mobility 301 Protect. This is the third demo in a three-part series designed to get you started with enrollment and policy settings first, then take a deep dive on productivity tools, and finally today, how to achieve full mobile maturity. My name is Kayla Heineman, and I'm your webinar master moderating today's webinar. Sarita Fobbs and Lindsay Shaver, our mobile masters from IBM, will be walking you through the IBM MaaS360 portal in just a minute. But first, real quick, just a few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar console you're using is completely customizable, so you can enlarge the slides, the speaker bio, and the Q&A box, so we hope you take advantage and play around with your console. The webinar is expected to last about 60 minutes and is in listen-only mode. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so if you have a question you'd like answered, please be sure to post it in the Q&A box located on the left-hand side of your screen. You can feel free to minimize this box if you'd like, and you can access it again by clicking the purple Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Finally, we are recording today's session, and we'll make the link to the recording and slides available by email. So with that, I think we're ready to jump into the portal here. So Sarita, over to you.
Thank you, Kayla. So shortly, you should all see my desktop. Kayla, can you confirm that you're able to view my screen?
Yep, there we are right in the portal.
Great, great. So today I'm going to be talking to everyone about the protection portion of our environment. And MaaS360 offers different levels of protection. You'll see as we walk through the portal, you can be as lenient or restricted as you like with managing your devices, whether they're corporate-owned or BYOD. The perk about the environment is even if you're managing personal devices, you'll still have a level of protecting your corporate resources, but still not overstep boundaries and making end user feel uncomfortable about you managing their personal side of their device. So what we're going to start off with is showing a few actions that you can take with managing the device in reference to restrictions on the device. So what I'll do is I'll jump into the device inventory and I'll pull up a device for you. And let's see, I'll actually go from the home screen and pull up my device. We do have a cool search feature on the home screen. So from this screen, you can pull up any device and take actions. And in just a few seconds, my device should populate. Once we click on this device, I will have the capability of managing the devices, this particular device, as well as viewing the specs of the device. But over here on my right-hand side, you'll see the More tab, which will allow you to take actions like locating the device over here. We do offer privacy settings, so as an admin, if it's your corporate device, you certainly can track the device down via the portal. But underneath our privacy settings under security, you do have the capability of setting up a feature where you as the admin can say for those personal owned devices, we do not want to track them down via the portal. Within the same environment, you'll still have the capability of tracking down your corporate devices. Now over here under the More tab, you'll see the capability of locking the device. When you send the lock command with the devices based on the device type, for example, for iOS, it will send that device to the lock screen. For your Android, the same. So as soon as this action takes place, those devices will lock immediately. But you also have the capability of wiping the device. And we do give you the full wipe as an option if need be. Very great for your your corporate-owned devices if there's maybe a hardware issue or if the device is compromised and you know it's no longer in the custody of your company. Maybe someone's lost it and they are really not quite sure where the device is at and you need to execute that full wipe. It will set that device back to factory default settings. So it will be as if it's coming out of the manufacturer's box for the first time. Now, for those BYOD scenarios, we do have a cool feature called the selective wipe. This selective wipe will pull only the corporate resource from the device. So if there is a BYOD user that is departing or may be terminated, it gives you a quick way to pull down any configured data that you have distributed to the device from the device immediately. And I'll go into this a little further, but we do have the capability to containerize or what we call sandbox at times, that data into the MaaS360 application. And with using the selective wipe with that approach, it pulls back that MaaS360 app that's housing the data. And another cool perk about the containerization is it does offer data loss protection. But as we go through the portal, I'll definitely go a little further in the details. So what we'll do now is we're going to jump into an MDM policy. The MDM policy is a device-based policy. We talked a little bit about this during the 101 part of the series, but with the MDM policy, you'll see that you as the admin have that capability of locking those devices down. You can set functionalities and expectations on those devices. This can be used in conjunction with our persona policy, and our persona policy is going to be the containerized approach. We call that the user-based policy. So, for example, you may use the persona policy to separate the corporate data from the personal data on the device and enforce data loss protection. But in that same instance with that personal on device, you may do things like push down the Wi-Fi settings for your company with the MDM policy to that particular device. So both policies can be implemented to the device. So what we'll do now is jump under the device restrictions, because this is a great way to set expectations, whether it's your personal, whether it's corporate-owned devices. Great player for that type of environment. We see some of the institutes like schools take a part of these functionalities, as well as hospitals. So, for example, some of the hospitals disable the cameras, and they disable them on either the personal-owned or corporate-owned devices, and they do it based on location. So we do have geofencing and location-based policies. So what happens is you can have a policy set specifying that once the device approaches a particular SSID or physical address, MaaS360 takes action on that device. And in this example of the hospital, many hospitals have the cameras disabled once the device approaches the building, and once it leaves that area, that action is revoked and the camera is accessible for the end user again. But you'll also see things like disabling Touch ID. As the admin, if it's a corporate device, you may want to disable multi-game player. Please scroll further down. One cool feature that we have the capability of disabling is activation lock. If you're using the device enrollment program or using the Apple configurator, you can certainly prevent that end user from associating that device with your corporate, their personal iTunes account, and ensure that those restrictions are set on those devices. Great for that corporate-owned device and ensuring that that device remains your corporate device. And you won't have to jump through hoops if that end user were to leave the environment and not disassociate that device with their personal iTunes account. So you do have a way of wiping that feature off of the device once it's executed with the device enrollment and the Apple configurator program. Some other perks about the environment is our persona policy, which I'm going to jump into now. Before I jump into that, I do want to talk about our mobile threat management. So Trusted Threat Management gives you a way to ensure that your device is being monitored for malware. So with this feature, you'll notice that it is not third-party. It's actually integrated into the MaaS360 platform. So once you check this checkbox, you as the admin are now enabling threat management to be monitored on the device. And it will pick up suspicious behavior, signature codings, as well as malware on the device with the applications. And you as the admin can even set exceptions. So for example, there may be an application that's coming up as compromising, but it might be an application that may be legit. So as that admin, you may want to come in here and set that application as an exclusion. Now, the cool thing about the mobile threat management is with our environment, you can set compliance rules that says if the device is compromised with malware, MaaS360 should remove all corporate resources from the device immediately. So for your iOS and your Android devices, you have that capability to immediately remove corporate data to ensure that the environment won't be compromised. And with your Android devices, you can even go a little step further. MaaS360 can even uninstall the compromising applications with those Android devices. So something else to think about with managing the device. But once we jump into the persona policy, which we're going to do now, you'll see you have other options with that particular policy with malware and monitoring the malware. So once again, the persona policy is a user-based policy. This is the approach of containerizing or sandboxing the corporate data behind a MaaS360 application. With this approach, that application is AES-256-bit encrypted. The data is encrypted as it transfers and at rest with this workflow. With it, your corporate resources will be housed behind the MaaS360 app, and you have the capability of setting other features to be accessible within that application. So the secure mail, with opening that MaaS360 app, your end users will see an icon for their corporate mail. We do have a browser, which I'll definitely talk about that a little later. That's great for allowing access to intranet resources, as well as web filtering for maybe corporate devices. You'll see things like documents, repositories in that environment, and I'll definitely go into further details on each of those categories. What I want to do now is jump into the passcode. You can certainly set a passcode on that container. So it's really up to you as the admin if you want to enforce a passcode on the device level with the MDM policy that we just saw, as well as enforce a passcode on the container or the sandbox side of the device. If you wanted to, you have that capability. Most admins that are managing personal-owned devices, I usually see them just enforce it on the containerized side of the device opposed to the overall device when it's personally owned devices, but it's really up to you. But with enforcing those passcodes on the device, you have a few options available. So you'll see you still have your 4 to 16 characters. You can make certain alphanumeric requirements. You can set a maximum passcode age, having it expire every 30 days, 90 days, is really up to you. But if you scroll further, when we scroll further down, you'll see that you can also enforce Touch ID. So you do have that capability of accessing that container with your thumbprint or fingerprint. And there's also corporate credentials. So we have, we talked a little bit about the cloud extender earlier in the the series 101. But that cloud extender will allow the capability of communicating with your Active Directory or LDAP, and with that workflow, we give you the capability, as you see here, to allow corporate credentials to be used to access that MaaS360 application that's housing your corporate data. Now, under the securities portion of the persona policy, you'll see that you can even enforce some device security policies. The first one I always like to point out is if that device is jailbroken or rooted, that MaaS360 app that's housing your data will immediately be disabled. And the same approach can take place for malware. So we saw the malware feature being enabled with the persona the MDM policy. So that can be used if you're not taking the containerized approach, as you see here, but you do have options both way, whether you're using the containerized approach or simply managing the devices without containers and having data pushed to the native apps on the device or clients. But if we click Edit, you'll see it's simply checkbox. All you would do is simply enable this feature, and MaaS360 will monitor the device for malware, and if malware is detected, that corporate MaaS360 application will not be accessible for accessing corporate data. There's also a time bomb feature. This feature says, hey, if this MaaS360 app is not accessed within maybe a week's worth or 365 days, you have that range of days, do not keep that application on the device, remove it. And it is revocable. So once you decide that you want to re-enable that application on the device, you can certainly do so. A lot of times I see this being used in scenarios where maybe an end user has purchased a new device. They have not let their admins know. They may have kept the old device and gave it to a friend maybe, or even their children, and they simply have not uninstalled the MaaS360 or reached out to the system admin so that that device can no longer be managed. So it simply says, hey, this app hasn't been accessed within 90 days. We're just simply going to remove it from the device. Now, as we move further down, you'll see data protection policies. This is going to give you your data loss protection. So as the admin, if there's an environment where you need to strictly ensure that your corporate data remains corporate data, this is where you would come to enable those features. So, for example, you'll see restrict file export, and this is any file that's in that MaaS360 application. It can range from attachments or documentation. However, some environments want to restrict that export, but there are some third-party apps that they would like the end users to export to, which is why we allow you to have the whitelist where you can specify those apps that the end users can export to, and you can add as many of those applications as you like. There's also your restrict clipboard export. And what this will do is it will not prevent the end users from copying and pasting while in the container, because we don't want to eliminate productivity from the container side of the device. But what happens is if that end user makes an attempt to copy data while in the container and paste it outside of the MaaS360 application, they will receive a generic splash that says, hey, this is against the corporate policy, to ensure that they can't just simply drag data into maybe a notepad or a personal email and save it for later. There's also your screenshot feature. This will allow you to, so for your Android devices, it will allow you to restrict the screenshots within the container. For your iOS, it's a little different. It is going to be overall to the device level. So based on the admin, it's really up to the admin on what approach they would like to take with that. But you do have those options available with the different policies. And then you'll see restrict printing or even restricting import of file into that MaaS360 application. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into your email functionalities or options you have in reference to protecting your email. So what you'll notice here is we're simply pushing down configuration settings. MaaS360 is not inline proxy, so we'll give you the capability of pushing your config settings down to the device. But with the persona approach, instead of that mail being viewed from the native mail client, that information is going to be accessible via the MaaS360 application. And this is done so that we can ensure that you have the capability to enforce data loss protection. So data always travels straight from your network to the device level. We're not inline proxy, we don't back up data, but we still give you that capability of having that data visible from the MaaS360 application to ensure that the data loss protection can be enforced, like restrict attachment forwarding. So you can certainly restrict end users from forwarding attachments or even sending to external domains. You'll see things like, one thing I do know, like a lot of the law firms don't allow end users to take contacts, or even other environments, maybe banking environments, don't allow end users to take contacts with them upon a departure or termination. So you'll see you have the capability of restricting the contacts from being exported as well. If we scroll down, you'll see the browser. And I mentioned the browser a little earlier, but the browser is great because the browser will allow you as the admin to have access to internal resources like your intranet sites. So for those environments that do need to give those end users access to intranet, we have something called our Mobile Enterprise Gateway. And if I click here, you'll see the settings for that, or I'll click here. And what it is it's simply a PowerShell that you sit behind your firewall, and it will communicate over port 44380. And during the configuration process of that PowerShell, it will generate an access code as you see here. And that access code is placed within the policy, and it's pushed down to the device. within the implementation of the policy. But you'll see here you can specify how the end users should authenticate, whether it's against Active Directory or LDAP. And I mentioned earlier that the Cloud Extender, which is a module of, the Mobile Enterprise Gateway, or MEG, is a module of that Cloud Extender. But that Cloud Extender can branch the capability of authenticating against Active Directory or LDAP within your environment. So once this is pushed down to the end user's device, and they open up our MaaS360 browser that we've created, which will mimic the OU that the end users are accustomed to based on the device. So if it's iOS, it will look like Safari. If it's Android, it will look like Chrome. And what happens is when they open up that browser, it will prompt them to authenticate against their account, their network credentials, and once they successfully authenticate, they'll be able to access your intranet resource. And other options, so if you wanted to put down some home pages or some favorites, you can push those things down to the device as well within that browser. Another feature that the browser is used for, more so I see this used in corporate-owned environments, is web filtering. So for those environments where the admin needs to disable the native browser, they can do so with the MDM policy and then come to the persona policy or the browser policy and set expectations on what sites should be blocked. So we do filtering by category. We offer a listing of categories. But not only do we offer a listing of categories as an admin, if you're unsure of the URL, you can simply come here and type in that URL, and MaaS360 will return to you the category that you should block. Now, not only can you block categories, we understand that sometimes there is a need to set exclusions. So we offer that capability as well. So here you'll see you can set those exclusions and those blacklists of categories that should be accessible. And we scroll a little further down, you'll see as the admin, you can set notifications. So, for example, some admins would like to know when end users are trying to access sites that are blocked or should be blocked. We do offer reporting on that, and I can definitely show that towards the end of the call. But you certainly can be aware of what sites that they may have made attempts to go to that may have been blocked, or what sites they have went to from your secure browser that may not have been a blocked site. So what I'm going to do now is we do offer document syncing with our MaaS360 environment. I'm going to actually jump into a different section to show you the functionalities that you have accessible with managing the devices in reference to making documents available to the end users. So not only are you making these documents available, but with that persona policy that you just saw, we give you the capability to ensure that that data is protected. So with the Mobile Enterprise Gateway that I mentioned, not only is it a secure way to set up that SSL tunnel to access resources like your intranet sites, it can give a way for your end users to access repositories, so like your SharePoints, your Windows file share structure. So with that, you'll see some of that available here, and it is all accessed through our MaaS360 app with this workflow. And it still sets the expectation that that data is protected with our data loss protection when enforcing the necessary credentials. So let me pull up one that I know we're actually using, or I'll actually just click on Windows File Share. You'll see it's a simple setup. Once you have that Mobile Enterprise Gateway that uses services accounts on your back end, that PowerShell, and once again, I mentioned that it does communicate over port 44380, outbound and inbound. But once that's set up, you just simply come into the portal and specify the necessary information, like your display name, the gateway that you're using. You will have a drop-down menu if you have multiple gateways that you've configured to select which one. Your source, which will be your server path, and then you'll have your folder path. Then you'll see we can specify what permissions, right? So You'll specify which group of devices should have access to that information. And then if you see here, you'll see workplace settings. Under workplace settings in this portion of the portal, it's referring to the persona policy. So if you enforce workplace settings, any setting that you set in reference to data loss protection from that persona policy will be implemented to the document. So if you specify restrict export, that restricts export will take place. If you specify data loss protection in reference to copying content and pasting it natively, the same workflow will apply. Or you can simply say no restrictions or simply restrict export from here. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about our time-based policies. In our MaaS360 environment, we do offer the capability of enforcing policies on location. So if we go under groups, you'll see that you can specify a group of devices, and if you click on more and hit change policy, you'll have that capability of specifying policies in reference to location. We see this being used in with sometimes field text where admins are enforcing policies specifying that after a certain time, and this is an iOS functionality, so this is going to be accessible for your iOS devices. But with that, you'll see that some of the field text, if after hours the admin disables them from being able to access that MaaS360 application, so they can't put in time stamps or say they worked after hours. So you'll see the capability of setting those expectations. Now, not only do we offer your time-based policies, I talked a little bit about it earlier, but we do offer location-based policies. So you have the capability of specifying a certain physical address or SSID. And what I'll actually do now is show you where that location-based policy is set up. So you'll see location, add an address based on location. You can type in any physical address here. It will search for you and zero in. You can give that address a name. And this is probably already in here, but we'll give it a try. And then it'll just add that. And here you can assign a policy to that location. And there's also your location-based policy based on SSIDs. So you can add SSIDs as well. So if we click on here, and I do apologize, my computer's a little delayed, you will have that capability of specifying SSIDs as well. Now, we do offer compliance rules and application wrapping. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the application wrapping first, and then I'll go into the compliance rules. So in the MaaS360 environment, we offer admins the capability of pushing down corporate apps. And with those corporate applications, we call them enterprise apps in our environment, but with the enterprise applications, you have that capability of enforcing the persona policies or data loss protection on those applications, as well as allowing it to tunnel in as a gateway. So you can enforce wrapping or SDK integration. So we do support that. And all you would simply do is browse for your app API file or APK file, IPA or APK file. And once you have that file loaded, you'll see some policies, you'll see some configurations, and then you'll see your advanced functionalities. But we do offer you the capability of enforcing the data loss protection. So, or even things like, for example, to access this application, you need to use a passcode. And these features are only available for enterprise applications. So those applications that we've either integrated with, and we do have apps that we partnership with in our partner world, but application partner world, but we also have applications that if you had a developer create those apps for you, you can upload them and take advantage of app wrapping and SDK integration. So what I'll do now is I'm going to jump into the compliance rules. Compliance rules give you the capability of doing if-then statements for managing the device. if this happens, this should take place on your device. And you can create as many of these compliance rules as you like. So as you can see here, we have a slew of these rules. You can assign them to devices or groups of devices. And what I'll do is I'll pull up one of those rules. And once this populates, you'll see that they can be based on different device types. So if you wanted to just have it focusing on your iOS devices, you could certainly do so. You have the capability of specifying notification recipients list, so a list of admins that should be notified immediately if a device is out of compliance. It will also notify those admins if a device goes back into a compliant state, which we certainly want to know and be aware of. There's also exemptions. So, for example, if you've assigned this policy to a group of devices, however, you notice that the CEO of the company is a part of that group, and you don't want to be as restricted to that particular device, you, from the device level of that end user, can set that device as an important device, and they will be exempt from the rules set. Now, there's different enforcement expectations you can set on the device. So, one being enrollments. So, for example, a lot of times, I talked a little bit about it earlier, but users go to purchase new devices. Once they go to the maybe Apple Store, and the Apple tech may go through the wipe process of removing the device or wiping the device clean. Maybe they have a hardware issue. In that instance, the device is no longer managed. So what happens is you, as the admin, can have MaaS360 automatically send out a new enrollments request to that device via email to that end user. And from their new device, when they receive that email, once they set up their email, they'll be able to go through the enrollment process of re-enrolling that device into the portal. But this gives you a way to always be aware of which devices are currently enrolled into your portal. So we do have reporting that can tell you that, but this will tell you if this happens instantly. There's also the capability of monitoring OS versions. So you can set expectations on OS versions. With the iOS devices and the group section, you can, if the device is supervised with the EP, you can push down the new OS to the device. We can't prevent the end user from moving to a new OS with iOS. It's simply just something the Apple manufacturers won't allow MDMs to do with manipulating those devices, but you can certainly be aware that they have moved to a minimum or a moved to a particular OS version. And if you wanted to, you can have actions take place with any of these compliance rules. So, for example, with corporate-owned devices, one policy we see being used is admins monitor application. So if they install a blacklisted app that you prefer them not to have on the device, you may want to pull corporate data from the device if you're not sure of the application. A lot of times some of these features, if you're using other features in the portal, may not be applicable. So, so this is for those scenarios if you're not using the containerized approach, but you're simply pushing down data to the native mail client, or if you're not using the mobile threat management, you may certainly want to say, hey, if someone installs an app that may seem that is on my blacklist, I want MaaS360 to selectively wipe the device and pull back all corporate resources. And once they uninstall that application, MaaS360 can revoke that action and push back the corporate data to the device. The same can apply for encryption, but once again, if you're using that containerized approach, that container is encrypted. This is in reference to the encryption on the device level. And the same as you saw for jailbroken or rooted. The same scenario. If you're using the container does have that capability of detecting if the device is jailbroken or rooted, if you check that feature with the policy. And what happens is if that device is compromised with being jailbroken or rooted, MaaS360 will remove that container from the device. Geofencing, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but we do have the capability to monitor location and set location-based policies. So if you wanted to, I talked a little bit about having a change policy take place if the device hits a certain area. So for those healthcare environments, one of the big players that we often see is once the device approaches the building, MaaS360 changes the policy disables the camera. Once it leaves that building, the policy is revoked and the camera is accessible again. And the admin can set a notification to the email of the user or a device notification, which is an SMS type message that will be sent to the end user's device, and the admin will be notified as well. Some other things that can be monitored in the environment is for maybe your corporate devices. You may want to monitor if the SIM card has been changed or if the device is roaming. We do offer mobile expense monitoring, which can be proactive with helping to not go over your actual data plan, and that's great for those corporate-owned devices. But that was covered in our 101 portion of the three-part series. Yeah, and you can also set up group-based policies. So, for example, maybe you want a particular group to not be able to have access to, if the group is a part, maybe some devices are a part of a group, you don't want them to have access to a particular feature on the device once they are associated with that group. Maybe they're out of date with their OS version. So you set up a group that says not equal to the latest OS version. Then we're going to pull corporate data from the device until you hit that OS version. So it's really up to you. But you do have different workflows to use to hit those expectations with setting compliance rules in the environment. We do have another feature that I would like to talk about in reference to security. That is our cloud extender. With that cloud extender, we offer the capability to quarantine the devices. We call it the auto quarantine. But the cloud extender, once again, is that PowerShell executable that you sit behind the firewall. It will communicate over port 44380. With that cloud extender, it gives the admin the capability to take advantage of a few different modules. One of the modules is called auto quarantine. And when you turn that feature on, it gives the admin the capability of knowing that an end user has made an attempt to set up mail on the device that's not being managed. So what happens is when they make that attempt, an active sync record is created, and MaaS360 is able to pick up that active sync record and leverage active sync and use the block function to stop the mail from flowing to the device. In the same workflow, MaaS360 will notify the admin, letting the admin know that that attempt has been made, and from the portal, the admin can approve or deny the end user the capability to access the data or their corporate data. Now, with doing so, if you approve the device, the end user will receive an enrollment request. And at that time, they have to enroll in order for that corporate data to be populated onto the device. And if you set up policies and the devices, the end user is associated with OU or that's pulled down from the network, a part of that cloud extender is you can pull your OUs into the portal and assign policies based on particular groups, network groups. But with that, you can certainly say, hey, once the end user is enrolled, they're going to receive the necessary policy that's associated with their user group. So if you're assigning the policy to that OU and they enroll and they're a part of that OU, that end user will receive the persona policy, and all the corporate data will be housed on the MaaS360 application. So you're going to ensure that that corporate data is managed and protect your corporate resources is protected before that data is implemented to the device. And once it's implemented, you'll know for sure it's still protected and that the end user will have to meet the expectations of your policies with your corporate data on that device. So that's your containerized approach. There are some other securities. I know we talked about your privacy settings. What I'll do is I'll show you where that can be implemented in the policy. So we talked about how you can set policies, your privacy settings based on your device type. So if you don't want to track down those personal owned devices, you have that capability of checking this checkbox, and from the portal, you won't be able to locate your personal owned devices. However, MaaS360 is still savvy enough to know that, hey, the device is associated with a policy that says if it hits this certain SSID, the camera is going to be disabled. At this point, if you're enforcing this feature, this is not going to allow reporting for the location, but it still can detect a location, and it just won't report back to you via the portal. So still gives you a way to ensure that you're meeting those expectations with security, but not overstepping boundaries with privacies for your end users. So you'll see that with your privacy settings. I talked a little bit earlier about setting the device as an important device. So if you wanted to ensure that that end user is excluded from a compliance rule, that's going to simply be done by going to a user's device and clicking on your custom attributes and checking this checkbox or enabling this checkbox as an important device. Move to important device. So you simply set that to yes, and it will ensure that that end user is excluded from those rule sets. So this concludes our protection 301 portion of the three-part series. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass things back over to Kayla, and she's going to do a little bit of, provide a little bit of information to you, and then we'll open things up for questions and answers. But I thank you all for listening to me, and I'm passing things back over to Kayla. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarita. Great job. So, folks, we're going to give Sarita a second here to go through the questions that came in throughout the presentation. And I do encourage you to get those questions in for Sarita because we are going to have about 15 minutes devoted to Q&A. If you minimize the Q&A box throughout the presentation, you can bring it back up again by selecting that purple Q&A icon. And I wanted to take this opportunity to point out that in the time it took to have this conversation, you could have already been up and running with a comprehensive enterprise mobility management solution. So you can start immediately. There's no infrastructure or paperwork for you to deal with, and you can try it with your own devices in your environment, and that way you can make an informed decision. The trial is fully functional. There's no limits on the number of devices you can enroll or features you can evaluate. And best of all, your trial environment is your production environment, so there's no need to re-enroll those devices or set up your policies again. All you need to do is set up your account and configure your services. If you need our support, our dedicated customer success team is available 24/7, 365, and can show you how to get the most out of your evaluation. Getting started is fast and simple. Simply select the free trial link from the resources section in our webinar console and sign up. So with that, we'll go ahead and dedicate the rest of the time here to your questions. So Sarita, back to you. Hey Sarita, are you still there? I think you might be on mute. I think we might be having some issues with Sarita's audio. Sarita, we can't hear you. I don't know if you want to log out, dial and dial back in, or if you're still on mute. But while Sarita is getting her audio sorted out, I saw a couple questions here about the recording. And to answer your question, yes, we are recording today's presentation. And the webinar will automatically transition to on-demand about an hour after today's presentation. So you can log back in via that registration link that was sent to you after you registered for today's webinar. Also, we'll send out an email that will contain the webinar and slides that you can view, so you can just watch your inbox.
Hi, Hi, Kayla. I'm back. So I have a question that says, I'm an IBM partner here, and I want to offer a trial and or proof of concept to my clients. Hi, Leonardo. We can certainly assist with that. If you reach out to your account manager, we can set up a proof of concept with our product advocate team where we can walk the prospect through a demo as well as or with an engineer where we can set up a proof of concept. Let's see. Let me go through a few more of the questions. I am currently doing an enrollment. Did you mention we can enforce enrollment via MaaS360? Yes, that's with our auto quarantine functionality, which is a part of that cloud extender, so that the end users will not be able to enroll unless their be able to access that data unless the device is being managed. So when they make that attempt, they will be prompted to enroll the device into the portal. Is Trusteer management included at no additional charge? There is a charge for the Trusteer feature. If you reach out to an account manager, they can allow you to know the associated costs with that feature. There's a question that says, how can I separate my test device and product devices? You can set groups and associate your test devices with that particular group, and then you can have product devices that are associated within the portal as well as your active devices. If you want to hide your test devices within the portal, you can certainly do so with the hide device feature as well. There's a question in reference, why are there two app catalogs installed, one inside the MaaS360 app and one outside? We can assist you if you reach out to the account manager with a customer engineer. There just may be a feature that was enabled that specified that that app catalog should be in the container, and then there's another feature that's enabling it outside of the container. But we can certainly assist with an engineer with fixing that or addressing that issue for you. Okay, just give me a few seconds, and I'm looking at some of these questions. Okay, there's a question that says, my question is, would I be able to configure iOS phone contacts? For example, I'm having a list of contacts that everyone should have and pushing that down to the device. That is something that we are definitely working on. If you wanted to export that list of contacts into a CSV file, you can certainly upload that to the portal and distribute that to all devices as a document as well. We do have another question that says, is there an on-prem version available? Unfortunately, at the present time, there is no longer an on-prem version available for the MaaS360 environment. But all features are available in the cloud in reference to managing the devices. And let me see. Okay, here's a question. Is there a way to disable the App Store, but only enable company application catalog, which will publish only company-approved apps? This can be done with supervising those iOS devices, whether you're using the Apple configurator or the DEP program. So with that, you can certainly ensure that the end users cannot install applications, but only make certain applications available with compliance rules, and with that distribution or with a distribution of applications, make only applications available that are associated with the company. And we can certainly assist with engineering call, or what we call eval, in reference to setting that up with you as well. Is there a quick setup guide for a trial environment? We do offer a way to quickly set up a trial. If you would go to our web page, there is a section on that page that says start a free trial, and it's very simple. If once you set up fill out that form on that page, you'll actually have a live portal. We would recommend that you set up or reach out to us that we could set up a call for you, because an engineer like myself can sit on that call, walk you through some of the features and functionalities, and ensure that that portal is set up properly for you, as well as allow you to take advantage of enabling some features at that time as well. Okay. And let's see. I have another question. If I have an enterprise application in the workplace container, can you allow it to access the camera? You can specify that you can have a workplace application, but the camera is the all or nothing type of feature, so you can specify that the end user cannot have access to that camera, but once again, that's an all or nothing type of functionality. So it's either going to be you allow them access to that information or not. Let me just mark. Okay. Let's see, what other questions do I have? How can I restrict Wi-Fi access? You have the capability of disabling Wi-Fi within the restrictions of a policy. However, it is, once again, one of those all or nothing features. So once you disable the Wi-Fi, those end users will not be able to use that Wi-Fi feature on the device. All right, let's see what else is in here. I see we have IBM BigFix, and I believe it has its own MDM. We are actually built into the BigFix. There's not any overlapping. However, there are some functionalities that you'll see in our environment that you may not have available to you in reference to the BigFix functionality. Is there a way? See. I have another question. How do I deploy MaaS360 in regional companies? MaaS360 will be able, you certainly can easily implement MaaS360 via multi-regions. Because we are cloud-based, it doesn't set any limitations to implementing the MaaS environment into different regions. You can have one portal, or you can have a hierarchy portal, allowing different regions to log in based on their different environments. You can have a portal based on a different region. I know there are some laws set up specifying that certain countries cannot have data housed in different areas. So we do understand that, and we do have different environments based on different regions. So you can certainly set up the MaaS360 environment in different locations and implement very easily, especially because we're a cloud-based solution. Is there a geofencing option? We do offer the capability to geofence the device, and you can set compliance rules based on those geofencing areas. And just give me a few seconds to look through some more of these questions. And I think I just have one more question that's available. I think the first part of the question is disabling the App Store. And then is there a way to install it on Android without logging into the Play Store? You do have this capability to sideload the MaaS360 application. You can work with a customer engineer, and they can certainly assist with sideloading that application for you. Yep. And Kayla, that looks like all the questions we have today. So I'll pass things back over to you.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to answer everyone's questions, and thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Just a quick reminder to watch your inbox because you will be receiving an email that will provide you access to the recording and slides for today's event. That way you can review anything you missed or share it with others. So on behalf of all of us here at IBM, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation and have a productive and secure rest of your day. Thanks again.